Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Unfiltered. You're listening to Pastor Jason Gaszak. And guess what? Today, I have my entire family in the studio. They're sitting in here making me laugh right now. It's really hard to do my opening, but that's okay. We're going to push through. Before we get started and before I introduce them, don't forget about my show sponsor, Silo Restaurant in Sullivan, Missouri. Great food, big salad bar, known for their fried zucchini and onion rings. And guess what? I said this last time. One of these days, I'm going to get the cook to come in here. I don't think you call him a cook. I think the right word is the chef is going to come in, and we're going to talk about what they really do down there. But check them out in Sullivan, Missouri on the South Service Road, and support my friends down there and let them know that I sent you and that you're listening to Unfiltered radio show. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about parenting, but specifically we're going to talk about to spank or not to spank. That's the real question. And so let me introduce my family. Here's my wife, Erin. Say hello.
Hello.
And how about my oldest son? Everybody knows him. He's been on the show before, Austin.
What's up, everybody?
And then our middle son, Dawson, or I should say our middle child, Dawson.
How's it going?
And then, of course, the last but not least, my favorite child, Zoe.
Hello.
So they are all here, and guess what? We are going to be unfiltered today with the Gaszak family when it comes to spankings, because trust me, all three of our kids have been spanked a few times. Mm-hmm. So let me first talk about this for a minute. Actually, what I like to call it is corporal punishment. That's really what you got, was corporal punishment. A lot of people don't like to say it that way. A lot of people don't even like the word, I'm going to punish my children. But truthfully, the Word of God talks about God punishing us, and it doesn't mean we're doing it to pay them back. It's more of doing it so we learn our lesson. And so those of you that think it's bad to bring corporal punishment to your child, listen, just hang on. Give me a minute. Let us talk about this. I promise my kids are normal. They're good children because, we beat them half their childhood life, but that's why they're good. They're laughing. Everybody knows we're laughing. In any case, let me give you the definition of what corporal punishment is. Corporal punishment is encompassing all types of physical punishment, including spanking, slapping, pinching, pulling, twisting, and hitting with an object. It also may include forcing a child to consume unpleasant substances such as soap, hot sauce, or hot pepper. I think a lot of people used to use soap. I mean, everybody on this radio show right now, everybody pretty much listening to this radio show right now, I'm sure at some point they or their parents have put a bar of soap in their mouth when they were kids because they said a wordy dirt or a dirty word. Yeah. And that was part of corporal punishment. I remember growing up as a child, my grandma, I lived with my grandparents for a few years, and when we were in the back seat acting up, she used to turn around and grab whatever she could grab, a piece of skin, and she would grab it, pinch it, and twist that skin. And guess what? I still love my grandma and grandpa. They're no longer here today, but I love them, and that was never... So I'm just kind of giving you what we used to do back in the day, kind of the old school thought when it comes to spanking. There are several scriptures that we're going to probably talk about, and I'm going to give them to you right now. That is Proverbs 13:24. That's probably the most famous scripture when it comes to spanking a child from a Christian perspective. And that says, those who spare the rod of discipline hate their children, and those who love their children care enough to discipline them. And of course, the rod of correction. In our household, we used a wooden dowel rod or a spoon. We would not use our hand, or we tried not to use our hand for the most part, and we'll talk about that into the show. But also, I like Proverbs 3, verses 11 and 12. It says, my child, don't reject the Lord's discipline, and don't be upset when he corrects you. For the Lord corrects those he loves, just as a father corrects a child in whom he delights. So again, another scripture that backs up discipline. Now, specifically, it doesn't say spanking. Of course, there are many methods of discipline, which, again, we're going to talk about. But I want to just talk about somebody, Aaron, you and I really listened to a lot growing up, probably more you than myself. I learned a lot from my wife when it came to this particular skill set of discipline, because really, I kind of thought you just treat them all the same way, right? You just talk to them the same way, you discipline them the same way, and those were the rules in the house. But trust me, later I learned that you cannot do that. Each child has a different personality, and the way you discipline them matters. But that person that you and I, mainly you, listened to was Dr. Dobson.
Absolutely.
And here's what I would tell you. If you don't know who he is, just look him up. He is a PhD in psychology, describes himself as a Christian psychologist. He's written the best-selling books on child rearing since 1977. He founded Focus on the Family, and in that, that's where he wrote all these books. And that's, ladies and gentlemen, that's 46 years
of success
of a man and his wife actually writing these books to help many people like you and me, because guess what? There is no instruction manual for kids. I mean, the only instruction manual really is the Bible,
right.
But it doesn't give specific, hey, if you have a child that is XYZ, then do 1, 2, and 3. And if they don't do this, if they do 2, then go to this. And it's like this diagram. There's nothing like that in our world today. And so guess what? It can be very challenging, as you know, Aaron. It can be challenging to raise children. So we still got a little time in this segment that I want you, Aaron, to just talk a little bit, you and I, of how that was for us, because we married very young.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you were 19 and I was 21 when we got married, and we had already had our first child, Austin.
Yeah.
Obviously, we did not do that the correct way, ladies and gentlemen, but guess what? We're still married 27 years later, 3 children, 2 grandchildren, and very happily married with very good kids. So you can make it work. The bottom line is we were very, very young, and we didn't know what the crap we were doing. At least I know I didn't know. So just briefly share with me what that felt like for you, and what your thoughts on what I'm talking about right now.
I was actually, like you said, I was very young. So I felt like I was overwhelmed by being a parent at so young. So I'm not the type to just be like, I've got it, I'll figure it out, just que sera, sera, what will be. I've always been a person that goes or seeks after someone that knows more than me, knowledge, anything. So it's funny because back in the day when we were having kiddos, it's funny, we can actually say that we're older than Google because there was no Google at this point whenever Austin was a baby. But there was a mailer. So a mailer that would come through the mail, and it had all these books. And that's the only thing we had. And so I looked on there and I looked for parenting, and and it was a Christian mailer. And so I ordered these books and I got them in, and I honestly just started really just kind of just downloading that information because I just didn't know. And that was my first experience of having knowledge that that had to do with them even being, well, Austin was the first one. So I was just trying to grasp something that would help me. But that knowledge helped me tremendously.
Well, and one of the books that you read was Bringing Up Boys.
Yeah, that was actually as he got older and his brother came around, and I had 2 boys, and then I went for Bringing Up Boys, and they have Bringing Up Girls. Right. I mean, there's so many. There's a Strong-Willed Child. There's all these, but
they have a new Strong-Willed Child now. They probably had to rewrite
it's revised, that. Yeah. So whenever anything that came out through Dr. Dobson's his resources, I just snatched it up. It was the best decision of my life, honestly, as a mother, because you worked long days, and I was there with them, and I just wanted to be confident and have knowledge. So
yeah, and I mean, you didn't just read the books; you listened to your mom. You had other women and instilling things in you, but probably more importantly, your mom, and then the books that you're reading, all the literature, trying to gain knowledge. But here's the thing: I think everybody needs to understand that's listening. Don't just listen to anybody that is trying to teach you how to rear your children. Don't in anything for that matter. Make sure that they have some type of history to where you can trust what they're saying. For Aaron and I, ours is biblical viewpoints.
Yes.
We had to make sure that whatever resource that we were reading had to be based off what the Bible says. That's why I read those two scriptures earlier on, because we know that another scripture says that if you what's the one that talks about that brings their mother shame?
Yeah, a child left to themselves
There
will
we
bring
go.
their mother
A
shame.
child left to himself brings his mother shame. I mean, that's another scripture that just goes to show you that discipline has to happen. I want to make sure before we go into the break that we're not saying that spanking is the only way to discipline your child. There are many methods that do work, but you can't forsake this type of discipline. I believe this type of discipline needs to happen in particular times and situations to let your child know basically who the boss is and that you want them to be corrected in what they're doing, which we can kind of dive into a little bit. But at the same time, today, this is a very controversial topic because it's right now about 50-50. 50% of America believes in not spanking and the other 50% believes in spanking. It's all over the internet. And what we wanted to do today is bring our children in to talk about what it was like for them in our household with our disciplinary actions and the way we did life. So when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about it. Don't go anywhere. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back from the break, and we want to dive right in with our kids to talk about what it was like to live in the Gaszak household. Right now, you can probably see them because that video is working for the two of you.
Well, good.
The two youngest ones are already smacking each other. They didn't think they were being videoed. They forgot. They thought we were just on the radio, but we got both of you in action finally.
Well, it happens all the time.
It does. All right. So the first question, I guess, that I'll just open it up with is, what was it like with living in the Gaszak household with our disciplinary, I don't know what you want to call it, our actions, what we did, how we discipline you?
I'll sum it up in one phrase.
Oh, geez.
We'll make this real quick. You had fun yesterday, so you can't have fun today.
Oh, you've always been wanting to say that.
I have.
You truly believe that?
No, on a couple of occasions.
I always had to choose which event I wanted to go to the most.
Yeah.
Choose which one?
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about it. I mean, what do you feel like? So, first of all, now that you're adults, now that your butts have been spanked by the spoon and you've had timeouts and you've been grounded, those are probably the three major ones that we've done. We didn't put you in the corner. I'm not a big fan of putting somebody in the corner. I feel like that's more humiliating than it is anything.
It breeds.
I do think there was a time, Aaron, that you put some soap in somebody's mouth.
Oh, yes. I think that was.
And not a bar of soap.
To this
Soap
day.
and vinegar.
Yes.
Oh, remember the vinegar.
To this day, here's what I'm going to
Apple cider
say.
vinegar.
Yes.
Oh, and
Which-
guess what? Apple cider vinegar is
It's
good for you.
And guess
Which I
what?
ruined it.
Yeah,
I ruined it.
I hate apple cider vinegar.
I do too.
And that was because they had said something they shouldn't have.
Yes, and actually,
So basically,
We
they
would've been-
spoke negative out of their mouth or something that was unkind.
yes,
Yeah.
and
Curse
anytime
words.
that they would say, harsh words, any kind of word, but yeah, we would make them. I'd actually put my finger on the soap and go like this, and I'd go, "Give me your tongue,"
Yep.
and they'd be like,
Yep.
And they'd have to lick it.
"Yep."
I mean, you shoved it down my throat a couple times. I will say that.
I think I even threatened Austin with some ketchup at one time because he.
Well, I
hates,
hated cat. I
Right.
still hate cat. But
Yeah.
that was pre-discipline. But
That's
yeah. I mean,
hilarious.
I think you guys did spank. I mean, you spanked me a lot, Mom.
I did.
But I only remember that because you told me that. I mean, I remember getting spanked a lot, but I also, in the back of my head later on, like I knew there was nothing I was going to get away with, and so it did do well for me. I mean, I was that defiant spirit that you guys were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
We were kind of talking about off the break a little bit
Yeah.
about it, but
Yeah.
but at the same time, you didn't just resort to spanking. It wasn't always corporal punishment. It was, like you said, the punishment fits the crime or whatever you want to call it. The discipline matches whatever the offense was. So for me, I thought it was, looking back on it, because I think that's important. A lot of the argument that I hear is that, well, you're going to damage your kids for life. They're going to be more prone to
Absolutely.
anger. They're going to be more prone to violence. Well,
mental health issues.
mental health. I mean, but I think it was just one tool out of the toolbox that you guys used of discipline.
Yeah.
I think it was
That's a great way to
when
put it.
you used it, it was needed. I didn't agree with it back then. I thought you guys were, And one thing that, you guys did quite frequently there for a time with me, because all of us are different, was you would say, because my biggest thing was I disrespected you a lot, Mom. Mm-hmm. And so you would say, well, you're getting in this now, but then when your dad gets home, you're also going to have a punishment when he gets home. And
Double.
So I was like, oh Lord, better go pad my butt cheeks, whatever.
Yeah.
So before I talk about, because you made a great point, and I know we did talk about this in the break, about it's really important to understand that it's not just to show your kids who the boss is.
Right.
It's really to get their will in check. They have a strong will. You don't have to teach that. Kids automatically have it. You don't have to teach a child to put his finger in the light socket. You don't have to teach a child to take a toy away and be selfish. You have to teach them the right thing. So that is the main thing. But the other thing is, if you are going to spank them, you should spank them the correct way, which is out of love.
Absolutely.
More than it is out of frustration or anger. Mm-hmm. And I will be the first to tell everybody right now that I have done both, and I work really hard at doing out of love, but there have been times I've done it out of frustration or anger, and that is what we have to be careful of. Mm-hmm. So before we get into all that, Dawson, Zoe, tell us, just a little bit about how you felt growing up in that household, and how do you feel about it now? What do you feel now? Is this something that you want to do with your children? Because Austin, you don't have kids yet.
No.
Dawson, you have a 2-year-old, and of course Zoe, you have a 3-month-old. So obviously we've been using some of these techniques on Levi, and so talk to me just a little bit about that.
It's been a challenging time to discipline my 2-year-old. I mean, there's some up and downs to it. I mean, he's, one of those defiant. I mean, all kids are defiant. I mean, so
He can be defiant, but probably what I think about is consistency.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you guys all say that that's really what it boils down is consistency?
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, Dawson,
Absolutely.
you seem like you're pretty good today. I don't think we abused you too much, did we?
No, I don't think so.
Zoe, what about you? How do you feel about what is going on with Brixton? Is this something that you want to implement with your kids? And then also, how was it being in our household? Do you hate us now, or?
Definitely don't hate you guys. More than anything, I appreciate it because you guys, like punishing us or doing whatever you guys did, discipline, actually showed that you love me more than you hate me. So I think looking back, obviously didn't enjoy it when I did get spanked, but I was raised to be a responsible, respectful human in our world, and I now respect my elders, and I, treat everybody with respect and whatnot. But I definitely want to implement this with Brixton because I've seen both sides where there's no punishment and there's no spanking, and it's absolute chaos.
Yeah.
And I've seen the other side where it's too strict and then the kids get sneaky and it's almost worse for you.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that I want to do that with Brixton.
What about Isaiah? I'm just kidding.
He agrees. We're on the same page.
No, I mean,
Thank God,
spanking
thank
Isaiah.
God.
You want to spank
Oh,
Isaiah?
sometimes.
So you and Isaiah are on the same page.
Yes, absolutely.
And I know, Austin, you're getting ready to get married, and you guys have already talked about this. What about you?
Yeah.
You and Kinsey on the same page?
Yeah, we're it's not to belabor the point, but we are on the same page. We know it's biblical, but it's not the only tool in the toolbox.
Right.
That's what I'm going to say.
Yes.
And on top of that, she was, I'm hearing from her mom about, because we've talked about this with her parents, she legitimately didn't have that much of a defiant spirit. Of course she had her moments, but there's people that have more than others.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and that's the thing. I think if you remember, Austin, Becca, that's on her staff, we were talking about this, and she told me that she had never been spanked by her parents.
yeah.
And I do think there are some kids that probably can do that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, there are others that need, a spanking,
Yeah.
and probably a lot of them. And I would even go as far to say there are parents out there that need spanking. It's unbelievable today, the disrespect that I see and the lack of discipline I see as a pastor, but also just in the public of parents today that do not discipline their kids. They're so afraid to make their kids do what they want. And what I see is kids telling the parents what they want, and the parents are actually catered around to the kids instead of the kids being
Well, too
to
many
the parent.
parents want to be loved and liked by their kids, and
Yeah.
they're afraid to breach that, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can understand that. So we got to take another break. When we come back, this will be the long segment. We can dive a little deeper into some of these things that we want to talk about. So listen, don't go anywhere. Tell somebody about what's going on. Bring them on the show, and we will be right back in just a minute. Okay, we're back from the break, and boy, you should hear the conversations that we've been having. Zoe just said, when they're good, they're good.
Yeah.
We call that a Naniism, by the way.
Shout out to Nani.
That's an inside joke, and we're not sharing what that means. But hey, listen, we're just here with our children. If you're just joining us, my name's Jason. This is Unfiltered, and I have my entire family in the studio today. My wife and our 3 kids. Austin's 27.
Yep, 28 in a few days, actually.
28. Oh my
No.
gosh, yeah, 28.
This weekend.
Monday.
This weekend, guys.
Yeah,
Oh, my
Monday,
Lord.
28.
He'll be 28.
And we got Dawson,
Zoe.
who's 25, 25. I can't even remember how old our kids are. And then, of course, Zoe turns 22.
Taylor Swift era.
So what?
My Taylor Swift era.
Oh,
Feeling-
Taylor
Feeling
Swift era.
22.
Yeah.
Is
So we
when-
have adult
yeah.
children.
Yes.
So in this segment, what I want to do, Aaron, is let you talk just a minute about what we were talking about in the beginning, about the strong-willed child, that we don't want to break the spirit. We want to break the will.
Yeah.
Say something about that.
So, I mean, we were just kind of talking earlier about how important it is to protect the spirit of a child, but yet be very aware of the will of a child, the strong will of a child, because there's very much a difference. I mean, you can see it almost like a flip of a switch. It's like, you know, it's one of those things you can recognize right away. Not a lot of people can see it. They kind of ignore it. But if you ignore it one time, you're going to ignore it the next time. And it just gets stronger. The will just gets stronger. So squashing that immediately, and I don't mean squashing the child.
Right.
I just mean squashing that strong-willed spirit, you know, strong will is literally super important in the beginning, or it will grow into a monster.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I hear? What really frustrates me is I'll hear parents say, "Do you want a spanking?" or "Do you want grounded?" I don't know in my history of my life have I ever heard a child say, "Yes, please spank me.
please."
Here's my butt," or "Yeah, can you ground me? I'll take 2 weeks so that way I can rest." That doesn't happen. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
I'll take that now.
right? I mean, now we would want that. But the
Right.
thing of it is I don't understand why parents are asking their children if they want discipline.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, parent, do you want me to empty your bank account because you did something wrong with your money? You know, do you want to be fired just because you showed up late one time? No, we don't want that. We want redemption. We want to try again. We want, okay, give me a punishment. Give me something, a consequence for what I've done wrong, but give me an opportunity to do it better the next time.
Right.
And I think that's really what I think about. And I do want to tell a story of a mistake I made with Dawson. It's really vivid in my head. And I don't remember really how old you were, Dawson. I think we were at our old house up at Conert. And I don't know how old were you when we were there. You guys can think about that. But I remember this. And I don't remember what you did. I was just thinking about this the other day. But you had done something, and I got very frustrated at you, and I disciplined you. I brought corporal punishment to you in an angry way. And I noticed immediately when that happened, your spirit broke. You went upstairs, and of course, my wife was standing there. I looked at her. She looked at me and just kind of gave me the look that I had messed up, because when you're married, you know the look from your
Yes.
spouse. And it killed me that I had disciplined him out of anger, basically. And I have done this with all 3 of you, I'm sure, at some point, but specifically in this moment. And I remember having to go upstairs and humble myself and go to you, Dawson, and apologize and let you know that I did this in the wrong way. I shouldn't have, whatever. I don't remember exactly what I did. I think I smacked you is what I did.
I don't really remember, honestly.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's a good thing that you don't remember. But it really said something to me, because I had to humble myself to you and basically say, I'm sorry, I love you, give you a hug. And those are trying times as parents. I want to say that because I think too many times parents don't admit they're wrong. And so, this isn't about mom and I, of course, to you three, but, I think the biggest thing is what are some memories that you guys have? What are some moments just in the household? It don't have to be about spanking. I don't want, we believe in spanking. It's like Austin said, it's not the only tool in the toolbox. What do you want to say?
Well, I just wanted to say this real quick that it may not be a very popular thing to talk about. Like you said earlier, it's not very popular with most people that don't believe the way we do. If you're not a believer and you believe in Jesus and you walk with God and you're leading your family in the ways of the Lord, this is not as popular. It's not, I mean, I understand there are some that, that are Christians that have a hard time with it, but it's really God's institution for his people. And so when we walk in that way, honestly, it feels like you're doing something wrong, but you're really not. And we're trusting the Lord, and he kind of just makes up the rest. And so I just want to, say that because there's a lot of people that don't agree, and they're kind of people up in arms, but it's really just an institution for his people. If you're not a Christian and you're listening to this, you don't agree, it's okay.
Well, the thing of it is, correction is a blessing that prevents shame and undue hardship down the road.
Absolutely.
And what I see today is parents will not deal with their child when they're very young. Like, let's say Levi's age, he's 2. Mm-hmm. And honestly, yes, there are times he can be defiant, but it's not as much as what I've seen in many, many other kids. Levi, for me right now, he's a great kid. He's very happy. Sure, does he push the limits and doing what he wants? Absolutely. But trust me, all you really have to do with him most of the time is give him that voice, that stern voice, and say no, and he knows the word, and he does what we say. Yeah. Now, this is really important. One, for all those that are you listening right now, and then, of course, for you three that are getting ready to raise children and are raising children, is one important thing that Aaron and I did is we didn't use 5 different words to tell our kids not to do something. We didn't say, stop that. We didn't say, don't do that. It was always one word all the time, and the word is no. Mm-hmm. That's the word we wanted them to hear, no. And they get that. And they understand that we don't want them doing something because when they're very young, they don't understand all the different words, but they do and will understand no. Mm-hmm. Why is this important? Why is it important for our children to hear our voice whenever we're telling them not to do something? The reason for me is because there could be a major danger ahead. And if our children do not listen and something traumatic can happen and you tell them no and they don't hear your voice, you haven't trained them to hear your voice and the word no, then they're going to continue on to do what they're going to do and something terrible could happen to them.
Yeah, if we just recite Ephesians 6:1.
That's what I was going to say.
It literally tells us that if we don't obey, and I mean, our kids could recite it, but if we don't listen and obey, not all things will go well with us.
All of them are smiling when you say
right?
that.
Yeah, Dawson.
How many of you, do you all know Ephesians 6:1?
Yes, I know Ephesians 6:1. Dawson does not.
I can't word for word, but I know the bases, okay?
People listening to the radio, those of you that have the 3-child dynamic, you know
the first one,
that I'm the one who wears his shirts tucked in and has the memory verses recited because they were the most strict with me.
Oh my God.
And Zoe's like, who's Ephesians?
Oh, stop. Okay, not that far.
Well, and the Bible does talk about that parents should never abuse their power and authority over their children. I mean, there's a scripture that tells fathers not to exasperate their boys or their girls, because the thing of it is, when you do that, you're making them. And I know we've all done it, right? I've done it, roughing my kids up and getting them all mad and frustrated. But the Bible says that we shouldn't do that.
Right. It's causing them to go into anger, a place of anger, which will cause defiance towards you.
And that causes anger issues in the future.
Yeah.
Because
really
you don't know how to handle situations like that. I mean, you shouldn't be in situations like that, especially with people like your parents.
And I did want to make one quick point when you were talking about how to listen, when you were talking about listening, how important it is on the physical side of things. I learned this long ago that also when you're teaching your child to listen to that your voice that first time, you're also training them to listen to God one day in the very same way of how important it is that there's always through God's institution, there's always something further down the line that's going to benefit you. And man, if we could just do it his way, it's just.
Well, we know that his way is better.
It is. It is.
So we have about 4 minutes left in this segment. You guys want to share a moment of something we did to you that might embarrass us? Or
embarrass yourself.
Or might embarrass yourself. Do you remember the last time you got spanked?
Ooh.
Verbally or otherwise?
No.
I'm just kidding.
Physically.
Last week.
I got verbally spanked right before the podcast.
Tell us about it.
No, I'm not getting into that.
Come on, tell us.
I parked in a space I wasn't supposed to park in because I created the rule that you shouldn't park there, and I didn't follow my own rule. That was a verbal spanking.
who's
Honestly,
going?
physical spank, I couldn't tell you. I really couldn't tell you. I don't know.
So when you tell me you can't remember the last physical spanking,
No.
that tells me that obviously
God's way is
spanking
good.
Yeah.
didn't hurt you in
No.
the way that most people believe.
No, and people can say, "Oh, you're trauma blocked, whatever." Bull crap.
Trauma blocked.
No, I'm telling you, I've had 4 years of counseling, and it's not because of being spanked. It's because of other things in life that honestly I made those choices and why. And there's other factors, but it ain't because of the spanking. I can tell you that.
And I can tell you right now, when you were 6 years old, you would have remembered those spankings
Yeah.
because one summer he was the most defiant.
It was
child.
like every day.
It was every day. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, his butt
I
was.
only remember recently. I mean, this wasn't recently, but like my grandma spanked me, and she's a little bit, weaker in the arms, I guess. She spanked me, twice, and I was like, is that it? Like, I'm used to my dad over here, and so then she bent me back over her leg and just kept spanking. She goes, "I'm gonna spank you until you cry." And I just started crying, faking it, because I knew I'd be there till dinner if I wouldn't have.
I can confidently
Yeah.
say I remember the last time that I was spanked.
Wow.
Tell us about it. What happened? How old were you?
I was. This is gonna embarrass me. I was 16.
Ooh, 16.
bit
You want to
late
tell the
bloomer.
world what happened?
I think I remember this.
I snuck out. And let's just say that was the last time I snuck out.
And it was the last time you got spanked.
It was
I
the
remember
last
that
time I got
actually
spanked.
because
Yeah.
it was weird because
sad night.
all of our kids, all 3 of our children have done something honestly in their life that has not been great or brought, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is.
Caused you to grieve.
Yes, I mean, yes, it has
more the
caused
word.
us to grieve, all 3 of you.
And God.
Yeah.
But that time when Zoe snuck out, Dawson come running in because he's the little investigator, man. You got to watch
Snitch.
him.
No, that's Austin.
Yeah,
No investment.
But anyway, he comes in and said, "Mom, Dad, she's gone." And it felt like I was in the movie Taken at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
It was the worst feeling in the world. And it didn't happen one time. It happened 2 times. The first time, that little boy that took you, that you went with, I should say.
Yeah.
Why are you telling me no? Everybody on that camera is watching everything you guys are doing right now.
I willingly went.
I know you willingly went.
Unfiltered.
I know you willingly went, but you were duped into going,
Yeah.
in my
Yes,
opinion.
yes.
And the first time, okay, I was very angry. I was a pastor. I want to beat the snot out of that little kid. Well, he wasn't a little kid. He was considered an adult. But of course, I did the right godly thing and just gave a reprimanding to him. And then, of course, I came in and I whooped her hind end good. And I came out of her bedroom. And I looked at my wife and said, "That'll be the last time I do that," because I thought, okay, she's getting too old for this.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you a story. We got to go to the break because I want to tell you the second time she snuck out.
Oh God.
That was the last.
And that was the last time,
That
and it
was
had
the
to do
last.
with the cops. So
Yeah.
you're not going to miss this.
Oh, I love it.
I know you're listening to Unfiltered with Pastor
It's good
Jason
when it's not my
Gaszak.
story. I love it. Keep it coming.
Oh, yeah, your story's coming, and so is Dawson's. We all have one. Aaron even has them when she was growing up.
I do.
Listen, we'll be back in just a minute. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Unfiltered on Real Talk Radio Network. The break. break, and we've decided to, because I wanted to share a lot of the dirt on our children, and they've all said we got to change the radio show to Unwise instead of Unfiltered. But we are having a lot of fun. So let me, just before the break, I was talking about how Zoe snuck out of the house. That was her last spanking at 16. She did it a second time. The second time, of course, Dawson catches her again, Mr. Investigator over here.
I was home this time.
And I know we were all mad. We knew it was the same person. We were more mad at her because of how we disciplined her and what we told her. But in any case, I literally, with Dawson, drove over to this boy's house, and I was ready to march my butt in there and take everybody out and beat the snot out of all of them because they were over there at a party. I was ready to go and throw it down. But again, I had to remind myself, I'm a pastor in a small town. I'm a good boy Christian, and I can't do those things as much as I wanted to.
Yeah.
So what do? We go to the police station.
Yep.
And I show up and I tell them exactly what's happening, and Zoe wouldn't call me back. And finally,
you gave her time to like turn herself in.
I did.
Yeah.
I gave her time. I told her where I was, and next thing you know, the police were getting ready to go and be on their way, and she called me and she said, I'm actually at the football field. I said, what? And I said, are you by yourself? And she said, yes, he dropped me off at the football field. Ladies and gentlemen, you got to know this is like 1 a.m. and I was not happy that this boy dropped her off at the football field in the middle of nowhere at 1 a.m. So the cop looks at me, he says, don't you go anywhere, let us get there first. And they went flying with lights and sirens on, pulling down there. Go ahead, Zoe, what do you want to say?
The most embarrassing thing I think I've ever endured. He got there and he's like, what are you doing? I said, taking a walk. And he's like, at 1 a.m. I
Yeah.
was like, I'm going home. And
There's my dad right behind you.
yeah.
Anyway, that was the last time, and thank God we're past that. She's now happily married with a different
saved.
man.
That's right.
And so life is a lot
And
better. So it's and safe. You know, it's really encouraging because listen, you're probably sitting out there, parents, thinking your kids are in bad spots. Trust me, my wife and I mean, we've had some moments. We've been in some counseling, major counseling, because of our children.
Yeah.
And but guess what? They're all in a very good spot right now. Would you guys all agree?
Absolutely.
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
I just threw away the drug test kit.
Oh, we got to talk about that.
Yeah.
Should we tell everybody?
Sure, whatever.
Well, Aaron and I knew that Austin, there was something going on with Austin. We just couldn't figure it out. And this was back, ladies and gentlemen, when marijuana, smoking weed was illegal, okay? And we noticed that we just knew he was smoking weed. And he would deny it. So I ran up to the local drugstore, grabbed me a drug test, came back home. I sat it right in front of him. I said, you can do one or two things. You can pee in that cup or you can pack your stuff and move out. And he got so mad, slung that drug test across the room. I can't believe you're doing this. Yeah, and he started yelling at me. And I said, that's the way it's going to happen in my house, in our house. Drug tests, pee in the cup, or pack your crap.
Yeah.
Guess what?
I took a trash bag.
That's the saddest thing
Yeah.
I've ever seen.
It was a big trash bag.
Say it,
though.
Aaron. What'd you say?
It was the saddest night ever. Like
We
watching your
helped him
kid,
pack.
Yeah.
That was probably
watching your
happy.
kid pack his stuff into a bag and go out. It's
He
just
packed his
like,
stuff in a trash bag that night, and he was gone for 3 months before we even talked
Yeah, it was
once.
tough.
Yeah.
And then it was about, what, 6 months?
Yep.
Maybe a little longer.
It was yeah, it was almost a year by the time
It was
all
about
said
6
and
months
done.
before we started
Yeah,
talking.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then he had moved in with a friend, and he moved out of town and started making, in my opinion, poor choices, which he already knew that's what I felt.
I just continued the poor choices.
And here, I do want to say this
This
because
is the what do you call it? The not
Pinnacle?
punishment, but the discipline for, being older.
Yeah.
You had to leave. And
I can tell you guys right now, I've kicked 2 of my children out of my house for decisions that they have made because I will not tolerate that behavior in my home. My wife and I will not tolerate that behavior. Thankfully, they both have wised up and listened. But I do want to tell you, parents, something that I learned, and even my wife has learned, and that is this. It's easy for us as parents to always tell our kids what we approve and what we don't approve of, what we like and what we don't like. And it really did create a wedge in Austin in the very beginning because pretty much everything he did, we always disapproved of it. And that, for you, Austin, you could talk about that, but I know already because we've talked about this, is that is the worst feeling in the world to not have the approval of your parents.
Yeah. Yeah, and in some of those areas, I mean, you were right to not approve, but then it for me it got to the point where I'm driving, I have my own job, I'm making my own money.
Yeah.
If I want to go and drive and see my friends that live 45 minutes away every night of the week and I have the money to do that,
Yep.
then I should be able to do that. With the caveat, can't be coming to mommy and daddy for extra gas money.
Right.
You know? And so I think it's just, if it is immoral or if it is illegal,
Right.
speak up. If it is neither one of those things, you say it all the time, let your kids fail.
Yep.
And
Well, that changed after that
it did.
incident.
And I remember that.
I changed our whole
Yeah.
perspective. I told my wife we have to change this because we are constantly disapproving of our children in things that we wouldn't do, but they still need to learn. That's part of the discipline. When your children make a bad decision, as long as it's not illegal or immoral, for us it was according to God's word, we let them make the decision, and if they failed, they failed. Guess what? They'll learn their lesson.
Yeah.
And I remember it was a year later. Well, when you came to me, you asked us if you could get our approval to live in Jeff City, and we said, "Listen, you know how we feel. We're not a fan of it, but you know what? If this is what you want to do, we will help you move, and we will support you in your decision."
Yeah.
Absolutely.
6 months after that decision, he calls me up, says, "Dad,"
I need that trailer and U-Haul.
and he called us up to come bring him
And we
home.
all went.
Yeah.
And all of us I think all of us as a
We did.
family
Yeah, we did.
went up,
Yep.
packed your stuff up, and brought you home. And listen, it's just what we do.
Yep.
And I know it's not easy being a kid, right? I know it wasn't easy being in our household, but I also know it wasn't real easy being us as parents for what you three put us through. You put us through hell a couple
Sounds
of
like
times.
that's why they're in counseling. It's like us.
And Dad, even if don't say anything if it's immoral or illegal, and you even use that to today with just even a month ago, he came to me about our son. I was in a little bit of a pickle, after giving birth and stuff, but he came to me and he never says anything. He never mentions anything about our parenting, anything like that. And when he comes to you, you know that you need help. So, and even when you're doing your best. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I really appreciate it, but.
Yeah, that was just, when you're having a brand new baby,
And you got brain fog too. You don't.
brain fog,
you
you're
think
trying to
doing-
listen, you're trying to do things on your own. And I just basically said, hey, your mom is here for you and she wants to help you. And you need to give her the chance. And she did.
And most people would take that offensively and be super defensive about it. But when you know that they're coming to you with love,
Absolutely.
you look at it in a different light. So.
And it's kind of like you say this too. I mean, we've been taught this too. The more deposits you make
Yeah.
when you do make a withdrawal like that, like with correction or whatever, you have a bigger balance where you're not like in the red all the time, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, because if he was always saying stuff, I would just pass it off like, oh, he's saying this again. He's
Yeah.
saying this again.
Right.
But
Right.
Well, I've learned in life that even in my leadership here at the church, I don't fight for everything. There's a lot of things that happen that maybe I'm not a big fan of. There's things that you guys do as kids that I'm not a big fan of. There's things my wife does that I'm just like, I'm not a big fan of. But guess what? Everybody in this room is adults. All of you are your own person. It's not illegal. It's not immoral. It's not breaking the bank. It's not certain things.
Right.
And so you let those things go and you just move on because there's things I do that you guys don't approve of, or you don't, maybe not approve, but you just don't like, why is Dad doing that? Or you may say, Aaron, why is Jason doing this? Whatever it is. But the thing of it is, I've learned to only fight for the big things. Yeah. And I think that makes a difference in our family when I'm only fighting for the big things. So I'm trying not to say anything. I let you guys do what you do. I mean, right now, Dawson's dealing with that with Levi, certain decisions I'm trying to stay out of, and then I only come in when I feel like I need to. And even in those moments, I've even failed, So it really disciplining our children is we are learning as parents.
Right.
We have learned as parents. We don't have it down. Listen, if you're listening, we are not perfect parents. I never want anybody to think that we're coming off that we're perfect. We got it all together. We don't. But I will tell you what we do have. We've got it figured out with our children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're our children. They're my responsibility. They're your responsibility. So if you're listening as a parent, your children are your responsibility. I'm just wanting you to do something about learning how to discipline your children. If you don't agree with spanking, fine. You don't have to spank. But the one word I will tell you more than anything is be consistent in whatever you do.
Yeah.
Do not give your kids 2 and 3 chances for them to do something. If they do not do it after the first time, you discipline them. You give them a timeout. You ground. See, to me, if they don't do it one time and you ground them, that don't add up to the crime. It's either you give them a timeout or you spank them for when they do the right thing.
Right.
We only have 30 seconds left. So let me say this. If you want to learn more about this family, this Sunday, I'm going to have all of this crew on the stage. We're going to do a little Q&A, and I've got specific questions that I'm going to ask my kids, or Aaron and I. I have the questions. Aaron's going to be with me.
Yeah.
We're going to ask our children specific questions about the family life in the Gaszak household.
Absolutely.
You're not going to want to miss it.
Yeah.
Come to Roots Church, 9 a.m., 11 a.m. on Sunday, and again on Monday night at 7. Love you guys. Say bye, everybody.
Bye.
And we'll see you guys next week. Have a great week.